All right, hey, it's Wednesday, October 26th. Bring you a Lake of the Ozarks fishing report. It's been a couple weeks, not because of the lack of being out there, just not a whole lot has changed, and we've been extremely busy. But I'm going to try to bring you up to date here, what's going on. Lake level is 657. It came up about 2 to 3 inches the last couple days. We had a lot of rain, but even with all that rain, we really don't have a whole lot of runoff in any of these creeks. It was so dry around here, it kind of just sucked up most of that water. So, but we did get a lot of rain. It kind of, brought that water up just a little bit. But more important than that is it cooled it down a little bit. We're running temperature from 63 to probably 66, depending on where you're at. The next few nights are going to be pretty cool. Today was pretty cool. And I think this weekend it's supposed to maybe rain again. So we're getting there. We're really cooling down. We're in the mid 60s, and when we get to them lower 60s, upper 50s, that's when they really get on a feed and things will really straighten out. The fishing's been pretty tough. I mean, I'm going to say extremely tough here, but we'll have these spotty days. Like last week, we had those couple 29-degree nights, a couple 29-degree days. And man, the days after that, last Thursday and Friday, prior to the OMTT championship, boy, they were biting. And, pretty much everybody I talked to said, yeah, they're catching them too. So we were really expecting some big weights. But if you've seen the results of that, I think 32 ended up winning it, but then it went down pretty quick. Only took like 22 pounds to get it checked for 2 days. So, you can compare yourself if you're just out fishing, wondering how you're doing. You can always look at the weekend's, fishing results just to kind of see how you're doing compared to everybody else. At least that's kind of how I do the comparison, But like I said, the water temperature is coming down, and the fish they're trying to start really feeding up on these shad. A lot of gizzards are starting to show up. Finally, last week I started seeing a few, and obviously if you see the big gizzards up on the bank, there's some bass pretty close, waiting on them to come off of that bank to feed on them. So this time of year. Like always, Topwater plays a big part of it as far as the big stringers. And I think the deal with the Topwater is you're covering a lot of water. And it's all about covering water right now, for the last few weeks and still for the next few weeks to come. It's, you can catch them on a lot of baits, but since a lot of the bites, at least the bigger bites, are so far and few between, if you can cover a lot of water, your odds are better as far as running across some feeding fish, or maybe some gizzards that are up on certain points or certain banks, certain types of rocks. And a lot of it's timing. If you come through there when the fish are up feeding, and you're running a bait that's resembling some of these big gizzards, your chance of catching some good fish are pretty good. Right now, I would say, keepers, you can catch a lot of keepers, but realistically, I may be off on this, but I'm going to say throughout a day, 8-hour period, you might get 3, 4, if you're lucky, opportunities to catch a big fish. And I say big, I'm talking 4 pounds and above, And if you catch those fish, it makes the day, and you come in, you have a really good day, or a heavy stringer, a different stringer between 12, 13 pounds, 14 to 17 or 18 pounds. And if you can catch 2 of them fish, them big fish, that makes the world of difference, in a stringer this time of year, or at least your 5 fish. This time of year, they're just notorious. Some days they just are feeding and they crush the bait. And, it depends, whatever you're throwing. I've got a lot of topwaters laid out here. They'll just crush the bait and they'll get the whole thing in their mouth. But more than likely, or at least what I see, most of the time they'll come up and they'll just lick on the bait. They just come up and they lick on it, or they'll just bump the bait. And man, them are hard it's hard to catch, and it's so heartbreaking because a lot of them they're big fish, and you'll see them, they'll roll over that bait, or like I said, they'll come up and kind of take a lick at it, and then they turn and they go on down, or they'll follow your bait right up underneath them. You get close to the boat, and you'll see that big shadow coming, and you've only got so much, 8 foot of line out, and you can either stop it, slow it down, speed it up, give it a jerk, something to try to get that fish to react. Because once he gets close to the boat and sees you and he turns, he's gone. You usually don't get a second shot on those big fish. So it's all about timing. Put yourself in position to get lucky, but if you can get a big one to really commit, and you can get them hooked and then get them in the boat, that's going to make the difference in your day, or a good bag of fish. So the different baits we're throwing, the last several weeks, I've been throwing a lot of different baits. I've been throwing, of course, the X-Toad on the X-Bite. It's been a really good bait. It's real good, productive, especially now as we're starting to get all these leaves falling off the water, falling off the trees into the water. And if we get a windy day, them leaves will get right up against the bank, and they'll come out, 5-6 foot. And really, if you're going to throw the topwater properly right now, you need to throw on the bank and retrieve it. If you hit 4 foot from the bank or 3 foot from the bank, it's almost a wasted cast. You're almost hitting on top of the fish, and I almost think you spook them. I was watching some fish today. I was actually over at a PB2, and I was kind of looking off some of the sides. And I'll do it at Shawnee or wherever I put it and kind of watch. And I was literally watching. There was 3 or 4 bass, and they weren't giant bass, but they were keeper size, maybe a 3-pounder, and they were watching gizzard shad right on the bank. And these fish had their nose, they were 6 foot off of them shad, right off of the bank. And that's how they sit a lot of times this time of year. So, if you either throw the bait right on the bank, and as soon as it gets retrieving, or scoot your boat right up to the bank and make long parallel casts just off of the bank. I mean, when I say just off the bank, let your baits, like a buzz bait or whatever you're throwing, let it, 6 inches, and let it almost come in and hit them rocks a little bit, kind of make some disturbance, and then kind of come out, break away from them rocks. And a lot of times that'll trigger you a bite, because it just looks like and imitates one of the big gizzards that are right up on the bank. You can see their dorsal fins sticking out of the water, and something spooks them and they come out, and that's when the bass is just waiting there to jump on them. So if you can do whatever you can to make your bait imitate those shad, your odds of triggering a bite's going to be better. So, right now the number one topwater, I would say, would have to be the X-Bite with the X-Toad on it. Mainly it's just good this time of year. You can skip it underneath these cables. You can run it, right up on the bank. And it also is a little bit forgiving when you're dealing with these leaves. The leaves, I can't tell you, it was a heartbreak this past weekend. We had some pretty good fish going, and when we got to them Saturday, we couldn't even fish the banks because the leaves were just piled on there, and about every other cast, she was filling with the leaves, and it just kind of just put a big damper on the day. But regardless, a lot of times you can jump to the other side of the lake or the other side of the cove, or kind of play this wind a little bit. If there's too many leaves, look for a bank where the wind's blowing down it and might clear the leaves away, or blowing away from the bank, and just kind of look for open area, open water. This past weekend it was, that wind was blowing. Boy, it was blowing 30 miles an hour. We had big boats out. It was 80 degrees and the wind was blowing. The big boats were out. It was a perfect day for Vexus, because we just cruised down that lake. Wasn't even an issue coming in this boat. The ride is impressive, I will say that. But other topwaters we're throwing, obviously the Whopper Ploppers are doing real good. They always do. The Chopos are doing good. 2 totally different baits, similar in action, but totally different in sound from one bait to the other. And that little bit of difference can make a world of difference in getting a bite or not getting a bite. Just like the buzz bait's a total different sound, total different action. And for whatever reason, this time of year, just the slightest change or slightest difference in your bait's sound or retrieve or action or even color can make the world of difference of getting bites. So generally I'll either throw a white, a bone, or like here's a little chopo, a black. Black's real good some days. The white, these transparent, I really like these transparent ones. If it's real bright and sunny, a little clear water, this seems to, boy, it just looks like a shad, almost perfectly. And then you got your wake bait, some of your wake bait. This is a wake bait a friend of mine, Quarter Shoe, made. I don't think he's making them anymore, but you can probably still find them. It's just a slow moving, a lot of action, just puts out a wake on it. And some days they just want it moving slow. Even the whopper poppers or the buzz baits, just changing the speed, just barely creeping that thing on the top of the water will get you some bites. Compared to if they're really chasing, really aggressive, you can almost burn the thing back to the bait, to the boat. So just kind of keep that in mind. If you're not getting bites, switch up the speed. Maybe on some of these baits, or even like this, the gunfish, pencil popper, whatever you call it. You can work it real aggressively, or you can just walk it real slow. You can work it 3 foot, stop it, just let it sit there. If there's a fish around, it's going to come investigate it. And then when you start moving again, that's when they'll jump on it. So these particular type of baits, like this gunfish, or I got a spook in here. Some of those baits that you can let sit still and work a little bit and let it sit again, work a little bit. A lot of times we'll create bites, especially as that water cools down. As we get down into the mid 50s, the lower 50s, some of these baits will produce a lot better just because they're slower action. You can work it slower and keep it in the strike zone longer. So as we slow down or cool down in the water, some of these will work a little better. As far as banks, man, it's all over in the fall. You can catch them on these big main lake flats, secondary flats with big rocks. Or you need to switch it up and go to steeper banks, channel banks. Channel swings seem to be really productive. It's kind of where I'll start. I'll look for channel swings, channel banks, and I'll start throwing a topwater there. If I don't get bites there, then I'll make switch totally different and go to the flats, the flatter, bigger rocks. And mainly I let that bank show me if I want to fish there. Like if there's a lot of moss presence and I see a lot of moss on the bank, that's telling me that's going to draw the shad in. The big gizzards, that's what they're going up there for. And that's what I'll kind of target those particular banks with all that moss. So kind of keep an eye open for that moss. That's usually a northern bank, grows more of the moss. I think it's the sun shining on it. Whatever it is. But you look at these northern banks, a lot of ledge rocks, a lot of times will grow that moss. So that's kind of how I look to see where I'm going to start throwing the topwater. Real windy days, obviously the spinnerbait is starting to produce, coming on slow. As it cools down, a big spinnerbait, big Colorado will leaf, throw that trailer hook on there. Because it'll start out, some of them, just like the topwater, they'll sharp strike it, and some days they'll just eat it. But if it's really windy and that wind's blasting in on these points, you're probably not going to be able to throw topwater. The spinnerbait will be a good go-to bait. You can cover a lot of water with it, and it will produce some big fish. So that spinnerbait, you got to give it its due chance here. That's coming on real strong, but you can already start throwing it as that water cools down. Chatterbait's a good one when it's windy to cover a lot of water, a lot of action. You know, this is just a 5/8 ounce chatterbait. I believe this is Picasso, and I like to put a little swim bait on the back of there. I believe that's a Reaction Innovation. Kind of got a little chartreuse on it. Kind of imitate a bluegill or a big shad. So, you know, the chatterbait, that's a good one to throw and cover a lot of water. You know, like I said, it's just about covering water right now. This is a big glide bait here, a river to sea. But one thing I picked these up at Fitz's. Actually, Wayne showed me these. I knew they've been out for a while, and I was using some others. But these are actually clear bait covers, and it's so much easier when you've got, you know how we got all the rods laid in here on top of each other. You can look in there and see what bait is inside that, compared to like one of these old. This is just an old Bass Pro, but you know it's covered, and when it covers your bait, you can't see what type of bait's in there. So that's you know, these are a little bit older style, and these really aren't very quality. As you can see, it was kind of slid down off of my bait, really wasn't covering it up, and the hooks kind of tend to get hung up in these. So these were some of the original style out, but now these newer ones are much better. They're clear plastic. You can see your bait in there. Real good Velcro. Once you squeeze that on there, your baits don't slide in and out. So you may look into those for your topwaters, your spooks, your trouble bait, your trouble hook baits, you know, that get all hung up. So, you know, other baits that are coming on slowly, but as that water cools down, they're going to get real good. Of course, we know the wiggle warts, the rock crawlers, those are going to come on. The rock crawler, the different wiggle warts. You know, like the rock crawler, you got the red, which is always good, with the brown dark back. You know, you got the clear. I call this just a natural crawl, kind of a clear crawfish color. But you know, you start digging them into them rocks. Throw right on the bank, similar to the topwater. Looking for big rocks, you know, boulder style stuff, even down to baseball, softball size. And you want that bait, obviously, when you're throwing it, you want it digging in the bottom, creating a reaction, creating some sort of disturbance. So when these fish are up there chasing shad around, and this is, you know, digging down through the rocks, creating all kind of whatever you want to call it, you know, stirring up rocks, mud, dirt. It'll get the attention to, you know, bass, and they'll grab it. So you know, the wiggle warts, the rock crawlers, those are coming on real good. Even a square bill, if it's really shallow, you can throw your square bills will produce right now. You know, if it's real shallow and you're really digging in, maybe switch to a square bill. But you know, it's just with the crankbaits, they're other baits that will really, you can cover a lot of water, and that's what it's all about in the fall, is covering water. You know, other baits that we actually were throwing this last week and this week, the big 3/4 ounce Reaction jig, Crappie gator, and we'll put a big peck chunk on the back of it, peck crawl, and throw that along these bluffs and bluff ends, you know, and let it flutter down. It looks like a big shad. You know, if you throw it right on the bank and pop it off of there and let it sink down, as it's sinking down, a lot of times them fish are waiting there, and they'll grab that big jig. It just gets a big reaction. You know, it's a big bait and a big meal for them. And that's kind of what they're looking for right now, is a bigger meal. You know, not so much feeding on them smaller shad, but the big ones. So, you know, like I said, bluff ends, rock slides on bluffs are good. Anything along a bluff that's just different looking, shelves are real good, and that's going to last all through, you know, November for that style bait. But you know, right now, man, you just got to cover some water and keep going, and just know that at any time you can go down the right stretch and catch 4 or 5 fish in 20 minutes that'll make the day, make a world of difference. So you just kind of keep your head down and stay disciplined and don't get discouraged and keep going throughout the day. Because like I said, a lot of days, 1 o'clock, you might have one little fish in the live well, and at 1:30, you've got 16, 18 pounds. It can happen that quick. So a lot of times, I'll see the morning bite's really good, and we'll have a low, say about 10:30, kind of slows down. But then again, about 1:30, it seems to fire back up. And I think a lot of times later in the day, the shad go to the bank, and the bass come up, and they start feeding on it. So that's going to, that trend will continue as we get later in the year and the water temp gets lower. That afternoon bite will probably get a little more prominent, say from 12:30 to 3:30. You may get a lot of good fish in that little 3-hour stretch. So, this time of year, you're never out of it. If the fish don't bite early or you miss that bite, just keep at it, and your day can change around and turn around in a matter of a half hour. A lot of this time of year is making the right decision and the right choice on your direction. Saturday, this past weekend, we could have went either way and had the same amount of confidence. We chose to go down lake Saturday. We caught a lot of fish, but they were little. They were, barely keepers, a ton of Kentucky keepers, just never had no big bites, Sunday we headed out and we started to go the other way, started to head up the river, and I thought, I'm going back. It's been good to me the last 3 weeks. We headed back down lake again. The bite was better. We had a couple missed opportunities. Like I said, we had 2 or 3 good fish bite. We didn't get them, and that made a difference between having a decent bag, or not. So your decisions, which area you go, can make a world of difference. And honestly, a lot of it is just, kind of I won't say luck, because you got to put yourself in good position to catch them, do the right thing, be throwing the right bait in the right time. But some of it is a lot of luck this time of year, just going to the right area where the fish might be feeding a little better. One other thing I'll say is the lake had kind of went through a turnover the last, I'd say 3 weeks, but it was kind of odd this year. It wasn't all turning at the same time. There was like small sections, like a 5-mile section that seemed like that was turning over, and it was a goofy color. But you could go to a different arm and be just fine, But I kind of noticed the last couple days that it seems like it's all straightened out. I'd say we're done with any turnover. It seems early this year, but they had run some current a month or so ago, a little bit. And anytime they do that, I think kind of disturbs and breaks up that thermocline, and that kind of maybe changes that turnover, how much or how intense the turnover might be. And I don't think this year was really too bad of a turnover, where we kind of get into a funk, as far as not getting bites anywhere. Like I said, big fish have been, they've just been they've been hard to catch here lately. Like I said, you can catch a big one at any time, any day, any hour of the day, but you're probably not going to get too many opportunities for a big bite right now. I would say in 2 weeks, that'll probably change, and there'll be more big fish up because there's more shad up. The bigger fish is kind of like spring. In the fall, as that water gets down in the 50s, them big fish are moving up. They'll come out of that deep water and they'll start running the banks, chasing these big gizzards, and that's going to make them more, acceptable to being caught. So you'll see some bigger bags being brought in as we get later in the year. Another bait in the wind, actually Denise was throwing it Sunday, was a stick bait. I don't have one tied on here, I don't think. She had one tied on, but she put a limit of Kentuckys in the boat in about 30 minutes. Not like it was going to help us, but we had 5 in the live well, and we could call You just feel better just as we're going around docks throwing that top water. Throw something on them docks, on them dock corners, them dock braces. Run a spook, run a wake bait, run your top waters alongside them docks. A lot of them fish will suspend underneath them swim platforms. If you're shad are out there, you're seeing balls of shad out there, throw alongside of them docks, because you never know, a big fish is hanging out there and he'll come out and hit your bait. So, other than that, that's things are definitely changing in the next couple weeks. We'll get down. We'll start hitting the 50s, upper 50s, upper river arms. They're going to be there first, so that they're going to be way ahead of that lower lake. And any other river arms going to kind of fish the same. Grabois, Osage, Nianguas, Glaze, any of them. You can go way up the river arms, throw them big spinnerbaits around laydowns. The crankbaits will be coming on. So, you just got to jump around, change what you're doing, and cover a lot of water and hope for the best. So, that's about all I can tell you. The lake is slowing down, even though Saturday was one of the busiest days of all week or all year for some reason. It was busy, but it's really slowing down now during the week. I was out a little bit today. There wasn't hardly anybody out. And as we cool down, there's going to be a whole lot less boats out. It'll be a lot more enjoyable on the weekend. I know this weekend, I believe Alhana has a 2-day tournament. I think Bass Nation has a 2-day tournament on PB2. Probably 150 in the one, probably 75 in the other. So there'll be a lot of boats out there. So just be careful. Obviously, good chance of fog this time of year. Always a good chance of fog at this time of year. So if it's foggy and you can't see, just pull over the bank and start fishing. Don't run in that fog. Don't take a chance. It's just not worth it. It'll lift eventually and you can go on. So that's all I tell you about fog. It's just not a good situation for anybody to run at the speeds these boats are run. So, but other than that, I'll try to keep you updated here as things start changing a little more aggressively, and they'll change more often here. Each week, things will change a lot more. So we'll bring you up to date on that. So, until then, good luck. Come down the lake, get you some topwaters, have a lot of fun right now. Real quick, the crappie, they're really bunching up. You can go out and catch a limited crappie right now in an hour and a half, 2 hours. They're bunching up. The crappie look really good, and we're catching them alongside docks, around the braces on docks. We're shooting docks, open brush out in the open. You can catch them over that. A lot of big schools. Some of the bluff drops and trees along bluffs are holding fish. The crappie are all over. They're doing good. So, either just like a little crappie jig, vertical over top of them. You can't beat a minnow around them. I don't fish minnows much. Just don't like the mess. But that little Kitech, that little 3-inch Kitech we throw all the time, a little 1/8 ounce jig head will produce all the crappie you need. So, it's a great time to come down. So come down, enjoy the lake, and we'll talk to you next time.